You remember that time, right? During the pandemic, it felt like every time we thought we had a grip on things, bam, a new headline would hit, a new variant, a new Greek letter to memorize, and a whole new wave of, well, uncertainty. It just felt relentless.
And it left pretty much all of us asking the same question. Alpha, then Delta, and then Omicron just seemed to come out of nowhere. Why did they just keep on coming? Well, turns out a scientific paper actually tried to get to the bottom of that.
So first, let's just do a quick recap. As you can see on this timeline, the big game-changing variants came in hot and fast. November 2020, we get Alpha. Then by May 2021, Delta shows up. And just 6 months after that, Omicron explodes onto the scene. I mean, talk about a fast-moving target.
And that brings us to the main event for today. We're looking at a research paper from Nadine and his colleagues. They dove into all the public data to explore well, let's just say a pretty controversial idea about why all these variants were showing up.
The researchers put their big question right out there in the open. They wanted to see if the selective pressure from this massive worldwide vaccination effort might have actually somehow favored the emergence of new variants. And let's be super clear here, this was their starting question. It wasn't a conclusion, it was the idea they wanted to test.
So, what in the world is selective pressure? Well, in biology, it's basically any outside force that makes it tougher for an organism to survive. Think of it like a constant challenge. The organisms that just happen to have the right traits to beat that challenge, they're the ones who get to survive and reproduce, and they pass those winning traits on. It's like the driving force of all evolution.
Okay, so to really get how this pressure thing could apply to a virus, we need to do a super quick dive into how a virus evolves to begin with.
All right, I know this slide looks a little busy, but the main idea is actually really simple. A virus, can't do anything on its own. It has to invade one of our cells and basically hijack the cell's internal machinery to make thousands and thousands of copies of itself. And it's right there, in that copying process, where things can get a little messy.
And this is the key. According to the paper, RNA viruses, which is what SARS-CoV-2 is, are what you might call sloppy copiers. You see, unlike our own DNA, they don't really have a good spell check or a proofreading system to fix errors when they're making all those copies. Every single one of those little errors is a mutation, and every mutation is a chance for the virus to change.
So, keeping that biology in mind, how did the researchers actually test their big idea? Well, they became data detectives. They dug into these huge public databases looking for any patterns they could find.
Okay, so let's check out what they found, starting with the data from Singapore. Now, just focus on two things here. That light blue line climbing up, that shows the number of vaccinations going up. Then look at the dark blue line, which peaks a little later. That's the detection of new variants. What the researchers pointed out was a correlation in time. As vaccinations ramped up, they saw these subsequent peaks for Alpha, Delta, and then Omicron.
And they didn't just see this in one place. When they crunched the numbers from India, a similar picture emerged. Again, the light blue line is the vaccination effort. The dark blue line shows the reported variant cases. And right here, they noted a big spike in Omicron that happened while that vaccination campaign was really in full swing.
So, looking at these two charts, you might be thinking, okay, seems pretty simple, right? A clear pattern. Well, this is where science gets way more interesting and a lot more complicated.
And that brings us to what is maybe the single most important rule in all of science, something you've probably heard before. Correlation is not causation. Just because two things happen around the same time does not mean one caused the other. And you know who was really, really clear about that? The researchers themselves.
In their paper, they basically put up these huge warning signs. They said, look, our analysis is just a first look. It's preliminary. They made sure to point out that tons of different things can cause a new variant to take off. And they concluded that while, their data showed a correlation in some spots, it was absolutely not proof that one thing caused the other.
And now for the most critical piece of context in this entire story. This chart uses data from the exact same sources the researchers used. And the paper itself says, and I'm quoting here, "It is beyond controversy that those who were inoculated fared better in terms of hospitalization and mortality." This chart just screams that fact. Look at the red line. That's the weekly death rate for unvaccinated people. Now compare it to the blue and green lines way down at the bottom. The life-saving difference is it's right there. It's undeniable.
So let's just be 100% clear. The goal of this research was never to question if vaccines worked to stop people from getting seriously sick or dying. The data on that is just overwhelming. No, the goal here was pure scientific curiosity, an attempt to understand the incredibly complex relationship between a fast-changing virus and this unprecedented global health response.
Which leaves us with one last big question that looks to the future. What this paper really highlights is just how complicated the back and forth in a pandemic can be. So the real challenge now is, how can science get smarter about this? How can we better prepare for this incredibly complex dance between a virus and the very things we do to fight it?